Oh, really? Happy holidays! This Saturday night, throwing around the topic of generational wounds because somebody called me like he's like, you're like a vampire because you suck all the fun out of everything. And it is, this is how I feel about people who gloss over like some of these obvious, like to me, they're obvious issues that actually can be resolved so we can, party for fun and not for escape. And I found, especially with support, trusting support, these types of things, especially around the idea of racism and, any kind of discrimination are easier to get through when you just face them. Accountability doesn't have to be a punitive punishment, and it's always been presented like that, which keeps people on the hamster wheel. And it's like some of these demons, these dark energies, like will just like play around with your psyche and your like you're willing, like they see how much they can get away with having you do with them and for them. And a lot of times their messages to people, like some of the things that we perform in devotion sometimes is not even what those entities intended for people to do. But that's that people sometimes go to those lengths and that is one of the things where like that's when it's okay to put down your faith, as if you're having, unless it's self-defense, it is not okay to even for vengeance of a spirit. Like it's not okay to impose harm on people. And I'm not saying this in a punitive, punishing, reprimanding voice. It is something that we don't really cover, and I feel like we have a very much needed organization happening. However, is very it's like it's just being done in because of the lack of knowledge around how and why some of these people ended up in some of the positions that they ended up in. And when you, I mean, like if you don't know, you don't know. And if you are consistently being fed the lines that people are getting away with it, oh, I'm so poor and I'm like a victim of this circumstance, a lot of times like people are not aware. It's like sometimes it can be like your own friend or your boyfriend or your girlfriend that's fucking feeding you that shit in your like in your mentally. And so like that's kind of where I am picking up the ideas of soul ties, generational wounds, and these soul ties and agreements, and how it is time to teach that if you have a body, you have the power. And if I feel like one of my theories is that if people knew the amount of if people actually knew that like the old switcheroo thing actually becomes very costly for that individual, and like they actually believe in the intelligence of what they're messing around with. It's like they wouldn't do things like that in a punitive manner, and this goes for people of wealth as well. It's like and I, like I said, I learned to question everything. If like learning the truth about some of these stories, I think a lot of highly sensitive people, empathic people, like if your mind wasn't, fully protecting you, I mean, like we all kind of knew, we all felt it, but we all learned to live with it. And so the idea of a relationship tie, there should be a long list with the idea of twin flames. By the way, twin flames exist. I've seen 2 couples so far, and in the flesh, and they exist, but that doesn't really mean shit. Like they have a entwined connection that forces them to have to look at their own behaviors and hold themselves accountable, or destroy each other. Or no, stop. Destroy each other or resolve it, or or take distance to where they don't destroy each other. Like those very heightened connected relationships are, and I'm pretty sure like I wouldn't doubt it was a twin flame who started passing off, parts of their energies, like for people to understand what love is. And so I'm not trying to steer you from your self-defense mechanisms, or, like protecting yourself or even changing your mind. I do offer these perspectives because I have caught myself in a lot of exaggerated perceptions due to spirituality, being hurt, being insecure on top of it. Insecurity and spirituality do not mix. They don't. And so in practice, in cultivating that for yourself, like you want to really embark upon these layers of perspectives and techniques that came from a body, but some some stuff is channeled, and it is up to us as the interpreter to offer that interpretation. It's been my goal to get these out like hell or high water, no matter what I look like or whatever. When I get these, I do them so that I cannot alter it in any way or make it, try to take something that, is probably a message for somebody to save their life or something, and I'm trying to use it as a marketing tool, which is really easy. And that brings me into why we have charlatans and snake oil types of behaviors around spirituality. Why? Why do people use it, especially when there's such and you know, like, it seems like there's not consequences in utilizing these aspects, and the examples that we got of people who utilize those as a way to uh, create power and control dynamics, and you know, like, and to make money. And the thing is like, this stuff is so powerful and it works so well. that that's why it works. It's not necessarily so, like, this is another reason why I feel like this is important to just put out there, because we do have we're entering into that that, you know, like, those other types of exchange and understandings and nuances, and people are you know, like, communicating in totally different ways, and code, and storylines. And so, like, I feel like it's important to have some kind of baseline for you to come back to, especially if you get lost in your spiritual sauce. Yeah, like, like, literally, you know, like, your body is literally a medicine cabinet. Add some of these high-end energies, and you can go for a ride. Add, you know, drugs and sex, and woo, that's, you know, like, I feel like Hollywood is that example. That, you know, like, and just kind of how, you know, like, retarded people get around that. And just understand, no one ever had to, and still does not have to, make any sacrifices for magic to work in your favor, as long as it's harm to none. Yes, we do have the dichotomy of harm to none that does exist. And that is a long story, and it also has a purpose and a reasoning. However, when you are, it's also designed to you know, trap those who don't give a fuck, you know, like, on those levels. Like, it's also, it's a self-cleaning mechanism. So, like, this is where I'm like, a lot of our elders, they're not, like, really coming out and saying it and being like, well, we kind of fucked up. We should have never withheld this information from you. And some of this stuff, yes, was for self-centered reasons. Like, and when you understand that, you know, like, your empowerments, the message of sacrifice really is like, you're sacrificing the veiled knowledge at your current state in order to run your own energy and take, you know, control back over your life, which becomes simplified if you're not doing dumb shit, you know, shitty stuff to people. Which brings me to ties and binds and bonds and, you know, like, past life agreements and stuff like that. It's also something you don't want to fuck with or play with. It is true that Creator does not mess around with imposing upon free will of spirit or people. And I feel like we got the idea of cosplay to help us understand why some stuff does seem like it exists. However, there are some things that you do not want to take a very strong stance and seriousness with, and definitely have a creative way to approach abuse and abusers. And when you have the ability to see the soul agreements in an abuser, you have the upper hand to help them become an asset to help others shift. Their, like shift their their physiology, shift like neuroplasticity, your energetic field, your bio, like there is truth to all of this stuff. And when we have all of this noise and information flying around on top of people being so fucking triggered and frustrated, on top of pranksters and like kids who are fed up and hurt and tired of being lied to, like we really like have chaos going on, but this stuff is resolvable. And I like my idea with all of this is to like get my little wand and my crown and start doing digital learning and schooling, and I'm realizing like oh yeah, that is a good idea, but not while I'm susceptible to counterattacking in some of these situations. Your technology is a spiritual baseline. Native American people of, like in South Dakota, their energies, their elemental handlers, caretakers, love those people very, very much, to the point where they would teach anybody that would listen how to, like how to run their ceremonies in some of the old language and words and stuff for preservation purposes. These elements taught white people these things, knowing what they're susceptible to. This is where I'm trying to say, hey, pull back on utilizing others' behavior as a justified excuse to impose harmful positions to people.
Grandma, watch this.
Oh, because we haven't even begun to.
Grandma, watch this.
Oh, do it again. You want to do it in the camera? We haven't even begun to start to actually implement what the reality of healing is for people in general. And it's not, like the language and the philosophy and what people are teaching now, it's beautiful. However, it's very distracting. It's very distracting to what you need to do, and that's connect for the purpose of embodiment, so that in your heart, mind, especially if you are doing tasks that require you to really understand how to read people or investigate people. You want to have that connection so you understand So yeah, like so in terms of ties and binds, and speaking of ties, cords, this little one. And pull your cords. Especially like with cords and spiritual agreements and idea, like romantic involvement when it comes to spirituality. Like, I don't think it was an accident that like sexual businesses got tied up in spirituality, because like that's kind of what I've understood how God works is like the phrase that they're gonna work with where you're at. I've never seen another human that has the ability to do it as good as God does. And so in terms of those, I know like some of people's experiences have really, like they've had therapists really work with them in terms of abusive behaviors and addiction cycles and stuff like that. And like really, if you are addicted to that connection and that dynamic, that could be potentially harmful as to why your soul decided to split between two bodies to begin with. And what I do understand with some of the documentary stuff or whatever, like I feel like people get involved with that kind of stuff to create a sense of safety around them and for them. And like I know I encounter like people who like watch those like those shows for education purposes. However, like I said, if you understood that what you were getting yourself into to begin with, and you actually cared, and especially if you're doing it for a vigilant purpose, like you would understand that, okay, so you would do the astral work first, and that is just to release the intensity of that connection, but also release each other from the dependency on that, and learn how to connect with yourself, so when you come back together, it's not like you are grasping for each other. And I suspect some of this really advanced higher tech type of stuff, and FYI, like if you've ever encountered like the super development, it has been established and substantiated that how that was occurring, how those transformations were occurring, is not necessary. So it's just like a lot of angry, like people that don't look at their own shit, that end up agreeing to do some of this stuff in our present day, when this stuff actually can be resolved before, like in the time and the energy and the money is set up to like set people up, and they can make other people look like shit because they're no longer around. It's like you could totally take your resources and have a full-on transformation that will literally work with you your entire beyond your entire existence. If you understood like how the energies affect our bodies when we are, like, as a society agreeing to, pull each other into malnutrition, mental illness, and all this shit, like, like, most of the time, these little diabolical plans has something to do with somebody's fucking broken heart. Because we're told that love is the issue, that love is the problem, and that those types of emotions for one person can never be felt for another ever again. And, like, that's... So under those circumstances, with your mind, and 9 times out of 10, the person who planted those seeds in your, like, in our childlike minds is no longer fucking around. And it could even just be could be an energy that I'm channeling. Because, like, a lot of these energies that that know better now, they definitely grasp at, trying to get the messaging out so that history is not repeated. In terms of atrocious behaviors, like that includes it's this is kind of where, okay, so and I'm just, like, talking, like, talking to that demographic that kind of utilizes this stuff to con and hustle, and, a lot of your justifications is, like, what the pastor does or did, or what, like, some of these yogi guys, like, we're up to and shit like that. And, like, there's a lot of, feminines that I feel like are probably just, that there's a lot of people that don't know how to approach the situation to make it right. And I don't doubt that people get a glimpse of how simple but not easy that it really is. So I try to not talk around in circle jerks about this, so that, like, just to save that person that could be overzealous. And especially if you are especially if you are on any endeavor to impress another person, that gives you even more of a motivation to move towards making a certain decision. And, like, some people will try their shit anyway. And, like I said, like, these ancient elemental beings that have seen literally everything, they do try to save lives as much as possible, and they don't go and tricking people, like, in punitive manners, like some people thought it was okay to do to people who couldn't stand up for themselves or were in vulnerable positions. So, and any influence that some of these people have had on twin flame relationships, even, like, connections in tarot, or just connections in general, like, really release, because it becomes an addiction too to have control in a relationship, and if it's one-sided and if it's spellbound, it's not. It just doesn't end up working in the way, like, it baits you into believing that it's working, and like the consequences of that stuff is drastic. However, like I said, there's a lot of compassion beyond what we do to each other when it comes to working with these energies. So in a nutshell, in a nutshell, nutter butter, in a nutshell, imposing upon free will of people, and like there's a multitude of ways that those violations have occurred since COVID. And like if you look at charitable, like even like churches and stuff, yeah, they did the bare minimum and stole from people, but like the amount of punitive behaviors and actions, like those people grew through understanding, like you don't do that. Relationships, romantic relationships. Utilize your spirituality and your magic to get in shape, not at another person's expense. And when you run your own energy, what you think you're getting when you're being tricked into that shit, you get. And be willing to allow, if somebody doesn't fucking like you, they don't like you. Like, let it go. And especially for some of you people who are, like involved with highly petty, punitive friend groups, like, from the last time I was exposed to that, like, what in my understanding the purpose was to desensitize to that stuff, where it's no longer that big of a deal to like hurt each other emotionally in those ways. However, there's a lot of young ladies out there that can begin to like study for like sexual health, like in all kinds of different types of ways. You can do a peer-to-peer approach. You could do hygiene products, condoms, like like you can partner with doctors, disability rights, like you could coordinate with them and have a way where we are all communicating, and like medical providers who are providing sexual health care are being like held accountable, and just ways of helping each other be accountable rather than passing the bill on each other. Because some of these instances of sexual abuse are, like they are of like there's people that just don't understand how to run or embody that energy. But I guess my point in that is, if you are utilizing it to
falsely if you are using powers to just don't fucking follow through with shit like that, man. Just don't do it. There's a ton of ways that you can make a person feel your wrath, and and there's some actual funny ways to do that. But it's even like I've even have been in some of these containers where I definitely was in a different reality dimension realm, and I was not using VR. And I'm pretty sure what my phone or my app was rigged with is illegal. And and to stop, I just, it doesn't sit right with me to just start regulating and all that stuff. So that's another reason why I try to unfold this stuff out of it being I'm trying to explain it really plainly, and some of this stuff is it's highly triggering, it's uncomfortable, which is reasons why people will totally avoid themselves and create little strategies to do things that they probably shouldn't do instead, because they don't have to face people or look at them again, or so they think. And what I've grown to learn is that there is actual healing. There's ways to heal abusers, and that does have a large potential to work, but you're gonna have to work it and put it into practice. And until that happens, the justifications that are being used are they're not. And that's again, it's okay not to believe in that, or just to even brush it off. So another reason why I say something is just in case it hits you like clockwork. You'll understand, and the easier you understand and can compute that, to not try to hustle your way out of it or do more harmful, because that's how a lot of people actually get stuck in that. But people are not understanding. People who may have been appointed to probably trigger you so that you could quit drinking or eating potato chips or some shit like that. But then you unfold a whole fucking, a whole lot more around it. And then, of course, because we're not communicating about things, and we are on witch hunts with people, or we're in these victim justice loops. There's a lot of behaviors that are occurring that can be prevented by just understanding that to begin with. And a lot of people who are doing some of this stuff to make extra money, or to pay for your kids' college, or to pay your rent or whatever. The thing is your techniques alone, or yours, even your story, if you had the courage to tell it, you create a recurring income around that, throw a little bit of creativity around it. There you go. And if you're helping people to heal from things that we were told could never happen, so, and that is kind of what I've learned, how I, like really like did myself a disservice by adhering to one way of learning, and was kind of forced into opening up on an intuitive level that was different. And I definitely was taken to a different space than the place of trying to impress a guy that I think, like looked back on it and how I felt and what was happening and how I was making my decisions then very well could have fell into taking some actions he really wasn't willing to take. And the more I learn about this stuff, the more I'm understanding that there's a potential that that person understood what the fuck he was doing and what was going on. And so,
Can I have some ice cream?
With those little nuanced details, that's kind of where like I'm not taking any chances on playing that, just because I really do have a background and a story. I have multiple stories of people, and even if it occurred by another person's hand, this is where I want to, like encourage those who think that, who are kind of skating under the radar. It's like, you are dealing with something different. That's not gonna miss you. Don't get arrogant and
Grandma, can you
don't
whistle?
get arrogant about it, and like have some compassion.
Grandma,
At
can
least
you
try.
whistle?
Anyway, I'm starting to sound like, like just repetitive. It is my, like I'm attempting to, like, the whole conversation started out as like romantic bonds that are, like that have spiritual agreements, and that's my reminder to like hone that and start helping people cultivate that in a more simplified manner, and like so that we understand what that looks like and what it is. And so it's not, like I've been on here almost 45 minutes talking in circles. Once you start running your own energy and you understand that, like a lot of this stuff has some truth to it. And when you really look at yourself and why you would even spread the word to begin with, there's a lot of neediness masked as helpfulness in there. And if you can't just own it like that, like this, if you can't just own that, and you have to dance around it, it comes out sideways. And a lot of times people unknowingly end up like enduring their karma because they imposed upon others free will and ability. To fulfill like their life mission.
a lot of abusers, especially the ones that got framed, have a mission. Have a mission.
Grandma.
And like I
Grandma,
said,
when are we going to pick up Dad?
those beings love those people very much. And you know, just think Vegas, you know, like if you like thunder and lightning, you know, like Vegas. The you know, like the different personalities of Las Vegas. There's definitely an aspect of those of people who portray like the flashy but don't fuck around aspect as well. And as a at least wannabe adult woman, I feel like it's not okay to not try to talk about this stuff after understanding it in this manner, at least offer my perspective around it. Especially if it can help a person not make a split second decision that, you know, they could, you know, like not only fucking ruin their life, but like ruin them for lifetimes. Like, lifetimes. And if you like, like your body's finite, but your energy's infinite. And most likely your energy, if you were actually connected to it, would not condone or lead you to making certain decisions. And, you know, like in terms of how some of those are being made, there is some truth to that. However, there's like, you know, like there's skill that goes into, and you know, like I'm dealing with that right now where like I don't know what it is, but I gotta figure it out. And
Grandma, put it
at
back
the
in the
least put
freezer.
out videos that say, hey, you gotta like look at that in, you know, like in a different way. You can't be like, you know, like fucking pushing your button. This isn't GTA, goddamn.
Yeah, Grandma, I don't want
You know,
it anymore.
even though you made it that way.